Rosa Mendez pushed her cleaning cart down the marble hallway of St. Benedict Medical Center's administrative wing, her worn sneakers making soft squeaking sounds against the polished floor. At 42, she had perfected the art of being invisible. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and her navy custodial uniform hung loose on her thin frame. She had learned long ago that people rarely notice the person scrubbing their floors or emptying their trash bins. When words cut deeper than scalpels. The conference room door stood slightly ajar, and voices drifted into the hallway. Rosa didn't mean to eavesdrop, but Julian Ashford's voice carried that particular quality of someone accustomed to being heard. He was the hospital's board chairman, a real estate developer whose donations kept the pediatric wing running. At 53, he wore expensive suits like armor and spoke with the casual confidence of someone who had never questioned their place in the world. "The spring gala invitations go out next week," Julian said, his tone light and conversational. "I suppose we should invite the entire staff, even though most of them wouldn't know a salad fork from a soup spoon." Laughter rippled through the room. Not cruel laughter, but the thoughtless kind that comes from people who have never had to think twice about belonging. Rosa's hands tightened on the cart handle. The words landed like small stones in still water, creating ripples she couldn't quite see yet. She continued past the door, her face carefully neutral, but something inside her chest had shifted, like a door opening in a room she'd kept locked for years. The weight of forgotten dreams. That evening, Rosa returned to her small apartment in Pilsen, a neighborhood where the walls were painted with colorful murals and the scent of tamales drifted from corner restaurants. She climbed 3 flights of stairs, her knees protesting each step, and unlocked the door to find her daughter, Nina, sprawled on the couch with textbooks scattered around her. "Mama." Nina looked up, her 16-year-old face brightening. "How was work?" "The same," Rosa said, setting down her bag. She didn't mention the comment. What good would it do? Nina was studying for her college entrance exams, working toward a future that Rosa had sacrificed everything to make possible. Nina's eyes were sharp though, sharper than most teenagers. Something happened. Rosa smiled, the expression not quite reaching her eyes. "Just tired, Mija. Ghosts in the closet." Later that night, after Nina had gone to bed, Rosa found herself standing in front of the closet in her bedroom. She hadn't opened the back section in 3 years, not since the accident that had shattered her old life into pieces too small to put back together. Her hands trembled slightly as she pushed aside the everyday clothes and reached for the plastic garment bags hidden in the shadows. Inside was a world she'd left behind, rolls of silk and organza, boxes of buttons and crystals, and most importantly, the leather portfolio containing her design sketches. Rosa had once been Rosalinda Mendez, a rising star in Chicago's fashion scene. She'd dressed celebrities for red carpet events, designed custom gowns that made society pages, and won awards that now gathered dust in a storage unit she could barely afford to keep. Then her husband, Miguel, had been diagnosed with cancer. The medical bills had piled up faster than her commissions could cover them. She'd closed her studio, sold her equipment, and taken the first stable job she could find. Miguel had been gone for 2 years now, but the weight of those years remained. A spark in the darkness. Rosa pulled out one particular sketch, her fingers tracing the lines she'd drawn years ago. It was an evening gown, elegant but not ostentatious, with clean lines that suggested strength and grace. She'd designed it for herself once, for a gala she'd never attended because Miguel had been too sick to be left alone. Julian Ashford's words echoed in her mind, most of them wouldn't know a salad fork from a soup spoon. Something stirred in Rosa's chest, something that felt dangerous and alive. It wasn't anger, exactly. It was something quieter but more powerful, the refusal to remain invisible. The decision. The next morning, Rosa stopped by the hospital's human resources office before her shift began. A young coordinator named Derek, who'd always been kind to her, looked up from his desk with a smile. "Mrs. Mendez. What can I do for you?" "The spring gala," Rosa said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The one for the pediatric wing fundraiser. Staff members are invited, yes? Derek nodded enthusiastically. Absolutely. The invitations go out next week, but I can put you down right now. Will you be bringing a guest? Rosa thought of Nina, who would need a dress, who would shine like a star if given the chance. Yes. My daughter. Wonderful. Derek typed something into his computer. It's black tie, just so you know. Very formal. I know, Rosa said quietly. Thank you, Derek. As she walked away, pushing her cart toward the day's work, Rosa felt different. The invisible woman who scrubbed floors had made a decision. She would attend that gala. She would create something beautiful, something that would remind her and everyone else that dignity wasn't about money or position. It was about refusing to be erased. The invitation arrived in Rosa's staff mailbox 3 days later, tucked inside a cream-colored envelope with elegant gold lettering. She held it during her lunch break, sitting alone in the corner of the staff cafeteria where the custodial workers usually gathered. The paper felt expensive between her fingers, almost mocking in its luxury. You're actually going? Her co-worker, James, asked incredulously. He was a kind man in his 60s who'd worked at the hospital for 20 years. Rosa, those things are for the doctors and the donors. People like us, we just clean up after. Rosa folded the invitation carefully and tucked it into her uniform pocket. Maybe it's time that changed. The woman who remembered that afternoon, while cleaning the patient rooms on the 5th floor, Rosa encountered Mrs. Helen Chen, an elderly woman recovering from hip surgery. Mrs. Chen was different from most patients. She noticed Rosa, really noticed her, and always asked about her day. You have beautiful hands, Mrs. Chen said suddenly as Rosa arranged fresh flowers by her bedside. Artist's hands. Rosa paused, startled. I'm just a custodian, Mrs. Chen. The old woman's eyes sparkled with knowing. No one is just anything, dear. Those hands have created beautiful things. I can tell. Something in Rosa's chest cracked open. A long time ago, she whispered. I used to design dresses. Mrs. Chen sat up straighter, wincing slightly. Tell me. And Rosa did. For the first time in years, she spoke about her old studio, about the feeling of fabric under her fingers, about the joy of watching a woman's face transform when she wore something that made her feel magnificent. Mrs. Chen listened with the intensity of someone who understood that some stories needed to be heard. Why did you stop? Mrs. Chen asked gently. Life happened, Rosa said simply. My husband got sick. The bills piled up. I had to choose between my dreams and keeping him alive. She smiled sadly. I'd make the same choice again. Mrs. Chen reached out and took Rosa's hand. Your husband would want you to remember who you are. Not just who you had to become. The workshop reborn that night, Rosa transformed her tiny living room into a workshop. She pushed the couch against the wall and set up her old sewing machine on the dining table. The machine hummed to life after years of silence, a sound that made her heart ache with recognition. Nina came home from her after-school job at the library to find her. Fabric samples, sketches spread across every surface. Mama, what's happening? Rosa looked up, pins held between her lips, her eyes brighter than Nina had seen them in years. We're going to a gala, Mija. And we're going to look like we own the place. The creation. For 3 weeks, Rosa worked in secret. She scoured thrift stores for materials, finding a bolt of midnight blue silk that someone had donated, still in its original packaging. She bought second-hand jewelry at estate sales and carefully removed the crystals to sew onto fabric. She worked after her hospital shifts, sometimes until 2 or 3 in the morning, her fingers moving with the muscle memory of her former life. Nina's dress came first, a simple but elegant design in soft champagne color that made her daughter look like a young woman instead of a teenager. Nina cried when she tried it on, twirling in front of their bathroom mirror. "Mama, it's perfect. You're magic." Rosa's own gown was more ambitious. She worked from the sketch she'd drawn years ago, modifying it slightly, making it more mature, more powerful. The midnight blue silk flowed like water, with a fitted bodice that she covered in tiny crystals arranged in patterns that caught the light. The neckline was modest but striking, the sleeves three-quarter length and elegant. She worked with a focus she'd forgotten she possessed, pouring years of silence and invisibility into every stitch. An unexpected ally. 1 week before the gala, Rosa was cleaning the executive floor when a woman's voice called out behind her. "Excuse me." Rosa turned to find a tall woman in her 40s, stylishly dressed, hurrying toward her. She looked vaguely familiar. "I'm sorry to bother you," the woman said, slightly breathless. "I'm Gloria Hartman. I used to work at Trendline magazine." "You're Rosalinda Mendez, aren't you?" Rosa's heart stopped. Gloria had been a fashion editor years ago, someone who'd featured Rosa's work in several articles. I go by Rosa now," she said quietly. Gloria's eyes filled with emotion. "I've wondered what happened to you. Your designs were extraordinary. I looked for your studio a few years ago, but it was closed." Rosa explained briefly, her voice catching on certain words. Gloria listened with tears in her eyes. "Are you going to the St. Benedict Gala?" Gloria asked suddenly. Rosa nodded, uncertain. "Good," Gloria said firmly. "I'll be there too. I'm on the hospital board now. I want to see you there, Rosa. I want everyone to see you." The final touches. The night before the gala, Rosa finished the last crystal on her gown. Her fingers were sore, her eyes tired, but her heart felt fuller than it had in years. She hung the dress on the back of her bedroom door and stepped back to look at it. It wasn't just a dress. It was a statement. It was every silent moment she'd endured, every dismissive glance, every time someone had looked through her instead of at her. It was proof that invisible didn't mean insignificant. Nina came to stand beside her, slipping her hand into her mother's. "Tomorrow night," Nina whispered, "you're going to show them who you really are." Rosa squeezed her daughter's hand. "Tomorrow night," she said softly, "I'm going to show myself who I still am." "Yes," Rosa said simply. "You do." Julian flinched. He'd expected her to be gracious, to wave away his ignorance. Instead, she stood there, waiting, giving him no escape from his own words. "I said something thoughtless," he began. "About people not knowing how to dress for events like this. I was wrong. I was incredibly wrong." "You were," Rosa agreed. "But not just about clothing. You were wrong about people. About dignity. About worth." She paused, letting her words settle. "I've cleaned your office for 2 years, Mr. Ashford. You've walked past me hundreds of times. You never once asked my name." The silence between them felt enormous. "I'm sorry," Julian said, and this time, he meant it. "Truly sorry." The real victory. Rosa nodded, accepting his apology but not absolving him entirely. Some lessons needed to stay uncomfortable. Catherine Blackwell, editor of Chicago Style magazine, approached with a business card. "I'd love to feature your story. And discuss carrying your designs in our boutique showcase." More people came. Compliments flowed. But the moment Rosa treasured most came when Nina hugged her tightly and whispered, "You showed them, Mama. You showed everyone." Rosa left the gala that night with her daughter's hand in hers, her head high, her heart full. She hadn't needed their applause or their approval. She'd needed to remind herself that she was still the woman who could create beauty from nothing, who could transform fabric and thread into dignity. As they walked out into the Chicago night, Rosa smiled. Tomorrow, she'd return to her custodial work. But she'd do it differently now, carrying herself with the quiet knowledge that every person contains multitudes, that every story deserves to be seen. Invisible no longer. Rosa stood before her bathroom mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back. The midnight blue gown transformed her completely. The crystals caught the light from every angle, creating the effect of stars scattered across a night sky. She'd styled her dark hair in an elegant updo, with a few loose tendrils framing her face. Her only jewelry was Miguel's wedding ring on a delicate chain around her neck. Nina appeared in the doorway, radiant in her champagne dress. "Mama," she breathed. "You look like a queen." Rosa's hands trembled slightly as she fastened her earrings. "I feel terrified." "Good," Nina said, grinning. "That means you're doing something that matters." Arriving in grace. The hospital's grand ballroom had been transformed. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables draped in white linen. Women in designer gowns and men in tailored tuxedos mingled with champagne glasses, their laughter filling the air with the sound of people comfortable in their privilege. When Rosa and Nina entered, a hush rippled through the nearest groups. A young valet named Thomas, who'd always been kind to Rosa during her night shifts, didn't recognize her at first. Then his eyes widened. "Mrs. Mendez," he whispered, awed. Rosa smiled at him warmly. "Hello, Thomas." The moment of truth. Julian Ashford stood near the bar, surrounded by fellow board members, discussing stock portfolios and vacation homes. He glanced toward the entrance out of habit and froze mid-sentence. A woman in a stunning blue gown was gliding through the crowd with quiet confidence. The dress was clearly custom-made, the kind of elegant simplicity that spoke of true artistry rather than flashy expense. She carried herself with grace, her head held high, her expression serene. Julian's companion, a surgeon named Dr. Patel, followed his gaze. "Who is that? I don't recognize her." It took Julian another moment. Then recognition crashed over him like cold water. The custodian. The woman who cleaned his office 3 nights a week. The woman he'd never truly looked at. The reveal. Gloria Hartman appeared at Rosa's side, linking arms with her warmly. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice carrying across the room, "I'd like to introduce someone very special. This is Rosalinda Mendez, one of Chicago's most talented fashion designers." Heads turned. Conversations paused. "Rosa designed both of these extraordinary gowns herself," Gloria continued. "She also happens to work the night shift here at St. Benedict, ensuring our hospital stays clean and safe for every patient." The room erupted in applause, but Rosa noticed the expressions that mattered most. The night nurses who'd never expected to see her here, their faces glowing with pride. Derek from Human Resources, beaming. Mrs. Chen, sitting at a nearby table in her wheelchair, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. And Julian Ashford, standing speechless, his face cycling through emotions Rosa couldn't quite name. The confrontation. Later in the evening, Julian approached her. Rosa watched him come, her heart steady, her chin raised. "Mrs. Mendez," he said, his voice uncertain. "I owe you an apology.